All
Look
right,
at
here
that.
we are. Recordings in progress. This is, I believe, episode 34 of Roaming Free Inside the Cage, our book study here at the Effect. And every once in a while, I say this little commercial that if you're watching us through archive and you would ever like to be with us live, you can always join us at any time. And all of the links you need are in the notes below the window there. So take a look, and you're always welcome to join us. We'd love to have you see your face and hear your voice. Otherwise, feel free to just keep watching the archives and we'll keep recording them. We're going to be starting tonight. And is she back? No. Anyway, we're going to be starting tonight on page 76. We're actually starting on page 77, but I want to back up a little bit like we normally do, just so we can get some running context on all of this. So we are finished.
They
Yeah.
just I was just prepared when you want to. I was just going to talk about the high level overview of the counterphobic six when you get there, because we were going to just chat about that. Remember the counterphobic six?
Counterphobic six.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to do that at the end of all of this, at the beginning? Where do you think it's going to fit the best?
Well, we talked a bit about the phobic six, which was the traditional phobic six last time,
Mm-hmm.
where they typically fear uncertainty, abandonment, lack of support or trust. Um, the counterphobic six is kind of an opposite. They have a counterphobic respond. They respond with fear to fear with a fighting strategy. So they're more confronting their threats head on to master them and prove personal strength. So the counterphobic sixes will appear tough and independent, often masking their inner anxiety with aggressive confidence or bravado. So they can often challenge authority, demand transparency through probing questions, and may provoke debates to test loyalties. And it comes off sometimes as a facade of fearlessness, but the subtle signs, sometimes like rapid eye movement or reactive gestures, will reveal their underlying doubt. So sometimes a counterphobic six, they'll rush into high risk situations. And Judy, you had mentioned this. They talk about extreme sports or
Yeah.
like confrontations. Just to overcome their fears, they'll just rush in head on. They'll champion underdogs and they can prioritize preparation via vigilance with hard vigilance, in groups. They'll defend causes while scanning people for betrayals, blending loyalty with their contrarianism. Um, but they do talk a little bit about the healthy counterphobic six is a six that can grow into becoming courageous leaders who balance that doubt with action. And unhealthy counterphobic sixes will become belligerent, suspicious, and blaming others more along that line. So their growth for a counterphobic six really involves softening their edges towards trust and integrating phobic caution with wholeness. So that was the other side of the six. And William, I was going to ask you this question, but I don't have an answer for it. But I don't think there's a test that says someone is a counterphobic six. I think typically it's a six that comes out, the person knows they're a six, and then they determine themselves whether they have those kind of characteristics that are more phobic or counterphobic, I think.
Mm.
Yeah, I am. I don't think there is a specific test. And I remember Russ Hudson, he doesn't like the counterphobic take because he thinks it complicates the picture a bit.
Mm,
It's just how we respond to fear, basically,
right.
because the fear he believes is still there.
Mhm.
We're just,
Right.
moving into the fear versus cowering from it.
Mm.
And I was thinking about too how sixes can often look. Sometimes we talk about the counterphobic six looking like an eight. And Sharon, I
Mhm.
know you and I have talked about this a little bit because the eight comes across as also in a very assertive number too.
Right.
But I think the counterphobic six, like William said, they're masking their fears, so they're coming across stronger to mask those fears. But the
Mhm.
eight is more worried about losing control and being out of control. So that's kind of their underlying fear. So the fears are different, but the actions on the front may seem the same. So
Mm.
they oftentimes look similar in characteristics.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've met counterphobic sixes who said they're afraid of everything.
Mm.
Right.
Wow.
But they just don't shy away from it necessarily or cower from it.
Mhm.
Mm.
So the
Yeah.
lesson here is that every single one of us in our unhealthy state is afraid of something, right?
Mm.
And for the
Right.
6, it's kind of fear itself, kind of the old FDR thing, fear of everything, fear of fear itself. For the 8, it's fear of losing control. For the 9, it's going to be fear of this. And so every one of us is going to have a fear of something that's driving us in unhealthy ways. If our enneatype is still unexplored, if we haven't
Mm.
yet done the work. And so it's
Mm.
just how we deal with those fears and fear of whatever it happens to be. So yes, as I was listening to you read that, Kathy, I was thinking the same thing that William just said, that Hudson said, that it's still a reaction to fear. It's just how you're going to deal with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I guess the good part of that is that the 6 can then mask as another enneatype in their behavior and in the
Mm.
way that they operate, and yet they are still their own type.
Mm.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So then, what we have is we're talking about 6s, or we're going to finish up with a pivot of the Tao Shu for the 6s. But the 6s, as we recall, and if you want to go back to page 6, you can take a look at the laundry list there. But they're the loyal skeptics, right? So their
Mm.
passion is fear, and their avoidance, their point of avoidance is spontaneity. And what I wanted to do was go back and read the last paragraph on page 76, talking about the point of avoidance, virtue, and the vice of type 6, just to kind of get our context and get grounding again as we jump into the pivot of the Tao for type 6. Okay, so let's go there now. Let's go to page 76, the point of avoidance, virtue, and vice. So he says our spiritual path as 6s starts with the recognition of the automatic quality of our doubting, critical minds, and of how little certainty they produce. And so now what we're talking about is he's just gone through, the where things go wrong, the initial wounding for the 6, development of the type 6, and then he's talking about this point of avoidance. And so as the 6 starts to move on to a healthy path, starting to move onto the path of transformation, it's going to start with the recognition of the automatic quality of our doubting. In other words, we're not even aware of it. It's just muscle memory. It's just happening. It's not a conscious thing. Our critical minds and how little certainty they produce. The next step has to do with turning inward, not into our heads, but into our hearts. What we will find there is fear. Each type is ruled by some fear. For example, 9s fear conflict and 3s fear failure. What do the 6s fear? Everything. Fear is the passion or vice that runs the entire structure of our type. And he sees himself as a 6. We fear conflict, but we are also afraid when everything seems peaceful. We fear losing, but we also fear winning. We are even afraid of fear, which is the reason so many of us cannot recognize ourselves as 6s. What is the root of all this fear? Oddly enough, it has to do with the virtue of our type. Most books on the Enneagram call the virtue for type 6 courage. I do not disagree with this, but I would like to specify it as the courage to trust. We are afraid to trust. Why? I have come to believe that we are terrified of trust because we so deeply want to trust. Our natural and spontaneous inclination is to trust, but our conditioned belief is that trusting has always led to catastrophe. So we eradicated the spontaneous inclination. In fact, we turned spontaneity into our point of avoidance. I guess small hairless mammals with oversized brains do not believe they can afford to be spontaneous. If we are lucky, someday we will go below the fear and discover that we have always wanted nothing more than to trust and to be trusted in return. This is in truth one of our most beautiful qualities, our willingness to trust. That's the original willingness to trust, especially to trust our own natural strength. Recognizing how we have fought against this quality with great determination may at first make us feel quite sad, but ultimately it will impart lasting relief. We can finally realize that the best part of ourself has always been the most rejected part, and that we no longer have to keep playing this cruel trick on ourselves. Finally, we need to turn downward into our own body and to be and its instinctual wisdom and strength. Some Enneagram books say that sixes need to shift toward nine, the home of holy love, yin energy, and a body type. More accurately, all types need to undo the constriction and lack of balance that limit them to using one particular center of experience and one aspect of life energy. For sixes, this means learning to trust that being itself will take care of them. When faith, the holy idea of six, is restored, love and hope appear as well. Okay, so that gets us back into the context and the fear that is so deeply driving sixes. Any comments or anything you want to say about that much? And do we have any six? I can't remember. Do we have sixes in here? No sixes, huh?
I didn't hear.
Bill, aren't you a six, buddy? No. Okay.
I didn't test as a 6, but I have 6 aspects too.
Okay.
And I was just thinking, yes, I do have my fears, but you said 8 is fear of losing control, but I thought it was also for vulnerability.
Mm.
And I do know me, I am confrontational. I tend to not shy away from my fears. I face them.
So are you counterphobic 8?
Well, yeah, counterphobic 8 and counterphobic 6, because when Kathy listed those things you said, I can tick off a few things. I can get belligerent and I fight for the underdog.
Mm-hmm. But are you doing it to mask your fears, or are you doing it just because you don't want to show weakness and you want to stay in control and you want to,
Yes. I don't know that I mask my fear. I don't know. Is it masking if I get belligerent? Is that masking? I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
I think sometimes if somebody's really upset, they can just start shouting louder and screaming louder, and they're trying to act scary, but they're really afraid inside, probably.
And then the thing about trust, and I remember writing on my margin here, if this one person that I trusted had any indication at all that this person is untrustworthy, it's like all or nothing. I kick him off my island. I will never trust this person again.
Well, that's a bit harsh.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that does sound more like an 8 though.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
8s love like authentic, honest, genuine interactions from people, and anything
Yeah.
that seems fake
Yes.
is
Yeah.
repulsive to them.
And there's a radar for fakeness, actually.
Yeah.
That fake laugh or it's just too sweet, that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the holy idea for the 8 is holy truth, right? Which is, obviously overlaps with holy trust, but it has a different flavor to it. Like that need for authenticity and strength and things of that nature.
Or things like I can feel it like, oh, you're just too solicitous, you're just too nice. I don't know. I mean, I could, of course I could be wrong, right? Yeah.
It's so funny when you guys were talking about is belligerence masking your fears. It reminded me of the story of this famous preacher. When someone got a look at his notes, they looked in the margin against one section and it said, "Argument weak, yell like hell."
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
But see, that's the thing. That's the illusion. The argument is still weak,
And
no
I
matter
heard
whether.
a
Yeah, but if you yell it, then no one's going to question you.
But
man.
I heard a quote once, Dave, too, that said, "Don't yell at me louder, improve your argument."
Right.
That's it. That's it.
I think that's the real answer, but
Yeah.
we'd rather yell.
Yeah, when I first
Bigger.
started in this, I really thought I was a 6. And looking further, I thought I fit in a counterphobic 6.
Mhm.
Definitely not a regular 6, but all of this stuff seemed to apply to me, but not in a pull back kind of timid way, although I used to be in some cases, but the trusting thing had really been broken in me. So, and I got where I was afraid of fear. Um, but as I progressed through it, um, and taking the tests, it turned out instead of a counterphobic 6, I came out as an 8. I think those two are really similar.
Mm.
I don't know if a counterphobic 6 is a real thing or not.
Mm.
But if it is a real thing, it's I think it's really similar to an
Mm.
8.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, William, can you explain the differences?
I don't have a nuanced difference except to say like for example the eights like they value strength and things of that nature.
Mhm.
And the core motivation, right, is to be authentic and to be real and things of that nature. Whereas the core motivation for the six would be to avoid fear or address fear in some way.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I don't have enough of a clean understanding of the two differences.
Mhm. Mhm.
No, but when also, I think Dave, you mentioned that the 6 can mask as something else or like an 8. How does one know one is masking?
Mm.
What do you ask yourself, or what would the other person look for to
I
say
think
you're
the question is always the same. You know, when we're being triggered, when we don't understand why we're being triggered or why we feel a certain way, the question to ask yourself is always, what am I afraid of?
Mhm.
Because if you can get to the root of that, then you're going to get beneath all of these secondary emotions. Like anger is a secondary emotion. It is always the result of something deeper. And so
Mhm.
if you are reacting in a certain way, if you're being belligerent, if you're yelling like hell, you know, if you can get beneath that and say, what am I really afraid of? Well, what? I'm afraid of being found out. I'm afraid, you know, is it a Peter principle thing where I feel like I'm in over my head and I can't compete? I mean, what is really the fear here? What's going on? And if you can get down to the bottom of that dog pile, then you really have a handle on what's going on and why all these layers of behavior may be present in your personality. But you have to be ruthlessly honest with yourself, and you can't stop short of what's really going on, you know.
I've got a son-in-law on the East Coast who I really value the discussion about the 8s and the counterphobic 6s because I've kind of tapped my um East Coast son-in-law as a counterphobic 6 because a lot of those qualities of he's very quick to rise to anger over little things. Um, I look at him the wrong way, and or he sees an eye movement of my own, and he's jumping on me. And my daughter has explained to me that she thinks he carries a lot of resentments toward me, and he's very quick to being belligerent, and and it triggers me in a way that I have to really breathe through things, and because I'm not used to that level of anger that he's blasting at me. And I've tried different strategies with him, one of which was very honest on my part and just, I just complied with what he was asking me to do, which was to give his daughter to him that I was about ready to put in the high chair, as my daughter had directed. And then he jumps on me and um, basically said, give her to me. He was working on the computer, and I just had to pause. And what I did in those moments was to say to him, um, Chris, I really could use your patience right now. And then he jumped on me again and said, I'm the most patient person you know. And I'm patient at work. And he gave me all of the excuses about how patient he was. And yet the irony was that he wasn't being patient in that moment. Um, so I just zipped it at that point because I wasn't getting anywhere, and he was about ready to leave in about 5 hours to go on a trip. And, I understood that he was stressed with trying to get a lot of things done before he left. And and so, I mean, he's a real challenge for me. And I appreciate the thing about authenticity and um, which I also code as, needing to be direct with him. And um, and I'm trying to, we're about ready to plan a visit to him in June. And I'm just trying to pray about how to address him, and try to clear the air with him as maybe a move towards authenticity, you know, um, and to help build trust with him. I've had one good conversation with him where I really did confront him in another situation that he blasted me. Um, and and I I had to walk around the block 3 times before I could get my own anger down. Um, and that conversation went well. When I got
Mm-hmm.
authentic and could talk
Mm-hmm.
to him respectfully and ask for what I needed, and it cleared the air.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I asked him, okay, well, you share with me what you're upset with me about. And he said, yeah, do you have a few more minutes? So we sat down and we had a really good conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So that worked the last time, and that was several years back. But there's just been something brewing, over the times that we've been together. And I'm just trying to, kind of ah, be patient with him and realize that he's got a lot of work to do. He's an untreated everything.
Mm-hmm.
No therapy, no nothing. My daughter is probably his own source of sanity in the family. And,
Mm-hmm.
and she gets a little wobbly sometimes too. So
Yeah.
there are challenges for me with
Oh.
sixes. Yeah.
I think one of the hardest things that we do is that with each of our types, we've got these vices and we've got these virtues. And when we do enough work that we've got our virtues more well in hand, then we want to be able to give that to people, right?
Yeah.
And we hold that up as a virtue. But in any interaction, we really got to check our motives at the door.
Yeah.
Because if we're just going to try to give out our virtue, we can make a mess of things.
Mhm.
What I try to do anytime I'm preparing to say something, especially if I know it's a loaded situation,
Yeah.
I try to preface, is the next thing I'm going to say or do, does it have, to my best knowledge, the potential to bring the relationship closer together, to create
Right.
more unity than disunity?
Mhm.
Then say it. Even if I think, well, it needs to break things up a little bit before it can get back to unity, but the end result will be, or knowing the people that are involved in the situation as it is, if I say this thing, no matter how well intentioned and no matter how quote unquote right it is going to blow things up, then stay silent. And and so it comes down to, is our motive a more utilitarian ethic where we want to create the greatest good for the greatest number of people for the greatest number of time, or do we want to be right? Or do we think that our virtue is one size fits all? This is kind of getting back to Ellen's question. How do you know when you're masking? How do you know? Well, it's asking yourself those kind of questions. What am I really afraid of here? Why am I so angry? What has triggered me? Why am I so offended? Looking at the offenses, looking at the things that still offend you, looking at your motives, and then ultimately, if we know that everything that we're supposed to be doing is creating greater unity and connection, does this thing have a snowball's chance of being able to do that? Given as much as I know about the people in the situation, and then you make your choices based on that, and you're still going to blow it, or people are going to take it the wrong way, but you did everything that you could. And if you go through that process within yourself, usually 8, 9 times out of 10, you'll be pretty much doing something halfway decent. But that's the process to go through if we're really trying to understand ourselves and our own motives, because no one's harder to see than yourself, right?
Yeah.
So we got to come at it kind of indirectly, in terms of trying to understand our own motives, and as we try to make our decisions going forward.
I think one main distinction, which Schafer made earlier, was that the 8s, they're body types, and they're all about control, right? Like power and control, trying to control people around them. Whereas the 6 is a head type who is overthinking and second guessing. So, that, I don't know if that's much of a distinction, but, I would imagine the 6s just live in their heads more than the 8s do.
I totally get that. As a head type, I resemble that remark. Yeah. So, okay, so let's move on to the pivot of the Tao, because we need to do something new tonight, right? No, this is a really good discussion. I'm glad we had it. Thanks, Kathy, for bringing that up. I had forgotten we said we were going to do that. So thanks for jumping in. This idea of the pivot of the Tao, I was thinking about it in terms of an image. Do y'all remember back in the day when carnivals were carnivals, and they had this one ride that was just a big round, what would you call it? Just a round enclosure. It had sides and it had a floor. And you'd get in this thing and you'd stand against the wall of it and it would start spinning. And when it got fast enough, the floor would drop out. You remember that? And you're just stuck to the wall by the centrifugal force. It was the trippiest thing. It was so cool. And then the floor would come back up and it would slow back down again. So that was the ride. If you were trying to create gravity in a spacecraft in space, well, how can you do it? Well, you could do it the same way with a centrifuge, right? If you all remember the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, if you saw it, the main ship there, the Discovery, had a big spherical head, and the middle of it was a centrifuge that spun. And as that thing is spinning, on the outer edges of it, you had gravity, because it wasn't gravity, it was centrifugal force, but it still stuck you to the ground, right? But here's the thing, at the outer edges, you had as much gravity as the spinning and the centrifugal force was going to generate, however much that was of Earth gravity. But as you got on the ladder and started walking toward the center of the centrifuge, you would have less and less and less gravity. And when you got to the very center, you were in free fall again. You were completely weightless. That's kind of the way I picture the pivot of the Tao. On the edges at the circumference of our Enneatype, there's a lot of gravity there. There's a lot of weight. That Enneatype is pushing down on us. But as we get closer and closer to the center, that weight is lifted and lifted and lifted until we get to the very center and we're in free fall again. We're weightless. And we are completely, as he likes to put it, frictionless. And so many of the things that we see in competition and grinding away at each other becomes frictionless at this point of the Tao. So for each one of us, we're trying to get to that center place where the opposition completely goes away. The resistance goes away. Both the aversion and the preference goes away. And we're able to just let things be. And so here's where we're going to hone in now with type 6. He says, on page 77, there's a deeply moving poem about trust written by Rainer Maria Rilke. Read it slowly, repeat its heavy lines frequently, and feel the ponderous weight of its grief. Perhaps I, like a single vein of ore, am inching through old sediment solidified in rock. So deeply in there is no end in sight, no open space. Everything seems too near, and everything near to me seems stone. And yet I am not skilled in heavy grief. So this colossal dark weighs down on me. But thou art. Brace thyself, breach my cave. Lay the full weight of thy hand on me, and I the buried depths of my soul on thee. And then he reprints it in its native German. He says the turning point of the poem is the admission that one does not know how to proceed any further. And the subsequent plea, I am not yet skilled, but thou art. The last word of the poem is a masterpiece of the ambiguity that opens up greater meaning. Shrine sounds like Schrei, which means a cry of grief. I don't think Rilke chose shrine simply to fulfill the requirements of the poem's rhyming scheme. The literal meaning of the word is cabinet, but it can also refer to an interior space, a shrine, or by extension, a coffin. To cry out, lay the full weight of thy hand on me, and I the buried depths of my soul on thee, is to make the greatest leap of faith, giving of the most deeply vulnerable part of self to the fierce power of the universe. This is the Tao Shu for the six. To the ego, and Tao Shu is the pivot. To the ego, the energy of fear and doubt and the energy of courage and strength seem opposite. Their unity appears only within the frictionlessness of no longer resisting them. Let me read that again because I mangled it. To the ego, the energy of fear and doubt and the energy of courage and strength seem opposite. Their unity appears only within the frictionlessness of no longer resisting them. What appears at that moment is quite surprising. I know something of this particular pivot, for I am a type 6. There is a story I can tell you that may help explain how strength first unraveled into fear for me. When I was small and I did something my mother had forbidden, I would get a few whacks from the yardstick, which was kept in the milk closet by the back door. What I hated most about the yardstick was that I had to fetch it myself. The whipping was not that hard, for my mother was not brutal. But being made to participate in my own humiliation was demeaning beyond words. My older sister tells a story about the yardstick. She says that one day, when she was 6 and I was between 2 and 3, we both got into trouble together. My mother commanded me to fetch the yardstick. My sister recounts that I went to the milk closet, brought the stick to my mother, and broke it in front of her. She swears the look on our mother's face was one she had never seen before. It was a look of confusion. According to my sister, I received no punishment for this act of rebellion. It is curious as well as a matter of great sadness to me that I have absolutely no memory of this event. I have heard the story, and I believe that it actually occurred, but it feels like a story told about someone else. In some sense, it is a story about someone else. It is a story about a child who trusted his own strength in a way that I could no longer recognize as an adult. It was the power I could access before I became me, whose story was that he was Billy, the fearful child. Before he appeared, apparently I could be spontaneously courageous. But that kind of trust in my own strength could not long survive in our home. I loved my mother dearly, and I needed her to love me in return. She could not have tolerated the kind of energy I possessed at age 2. So I lay it down for her, for us, really. And later, when I had become the fearful child, my worst dread was really not, as it seemed, my mother's power to punish. There's a footnote there at 6. He says, I now watch my youngest grandson. His energy is, if anything, stronger than the one I possessed. Butting heads with him, I have come to a new and more compassionate understanding for my mother. Isn't that the way it always works, huh?
Yeah.
What I feared most was my own strength, which I thought had the power to separate us. Isn't it interesting how these fears work? We're talking about what are you afraid of? It's like layer after layer. It's like an archaeological dig where you're going down layer by layer by layer. What is it that he actually feared? Well, he actually feared his own strength, but what he was really fearing was that somehow he was going to be separated from his mother, and that if he exercised this strength, that's what was going to do it. Like Rilke, I thought, perhaps, because nothing is certain for a 6, the vein of ore I sought, security, could be found only by inching along through solidified rock, my mother's seemingly endless requirements. But the real rock was within, not around me. It lay so close to my face that there was actually nothing to separate it from me. What I lacked was not power, as it turns out. It was being skilled in heavy grief, the sadness of realizing that it was precisely my own strength that I had surrendered out of misguided love. If this was my childhood path of rendering courage into fear, what would be my adult passageway for transforming fear back into courage? What I have found, I cannot say with any certainty that it will be exactly the same for all 6s, is that when I notice fear, usually it has to do with confronting someone who is important to me. If I simply stay with the experience, remaining still and welcoming, I begin to notice that just inside, or perhaps below the fear, is an expansive energy that feels quite powerful, even fierce. That's my power. That is what I most deeply fear. If I remain quite still, I can literally feel the energy running in both directions at once. One side toward the fear, the other toward power. At some point, they become almost indistinguishable, and I begin to feel sad. If I simply let go, the tension between them disappears. The sadness melts, and the courage to move ahead with faith appears in its place. I no longer have to manage the tension, and I can let the energy run as it wants to. Thus, I find that I have greater access not only to the yin receptivity of my central triangle partner 9, but to the yang energy of 3 as well. In this way, the entire triangle seems to come together, as I suspect it does for any other type once in the Tao Shu. Holy faith, once reawakened, leads also to renewed hope and love. Okay, he said a whole bunch there. But going back to the top, I think this is the important thing. I think I told you all that my experience when I started in contemplative practice, like 3 decades ago, is that I had the sensation of my awareness catching up to me as I was moving through life. At the beginning, I could remember things from my 20s and earlier that would literally make me cringe. How could I do that? How could I say that? How could I have been so stupid? How could I have been so oblivious, right? That kind of thing. And thinking of all the different ways I could have handled certain situations. And then after going down the contemplative path for a while, then I could remember things from last year. And then it was last month. And then it was last week. And then eventually it got to the point where, as the words are coming out of my mouth, or as I'm leaving a conversation, I realize, oh, why did I do that? And then as the words are coming out of my mouth, and then eventually there came that time where I could see it coming. It's like, okay, this is the situation that always triggers me to do thus. And I can actually head that off of the past and I can do something else. Your awareness has to catch up to you, because until you're aware in real time, there is no hope for you to make a different decision. You are going to be completely beholden to the programming that is in your unconscious. The tail will be wagging the dog. Once again, it gets back to Frankl, who said, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. In that space is where we have the option to grow. And so our job, and as we move down the spiritual path of transformation, is to create the space between the stimulus and the response. We do that with awareness. As soon as the awareness is in real time, we're triggered, we feel what we feel, the stimulus to react in the normal way is there, but now we can stop and take a breath and we can make a different choice. So he's saying, when I notice fear, that's the point at which, if it's in real time, there's still time to do something about it, right? If he's noticing it afterwards, well, then it's retroactive. Yes, you can still do some work. But when I notice fear, he says, usually it has to do with confronting someone who is important to me. Once he knows that, then you can start to see it coming. When you still have those situations that are coming, you're going to have that, kind of the conversation that Judy is talking about, and the one that she may be having in June. You see that coming. You know it's someone important to you. You know that it's a difficult situation, and you know how you normally react. Now you can start to unravel some of these layers of fears and all of the programming attached to every one of them, and start to move in new directions. But it has to do with that awareness catching up. That's what all this work is about. It's all awareness building. And that's the key. We have to be aware. We have to be aware in real time. This is what is always so inspiring and instructive when I read the Gospels and I see how Jesus moves from situation to situation. His awareness is right there every time. I love when he approaches Mary and Martha, on the way to raising their brother Lazarus from the dead. And Martha's the one who greets him first, on the road into town. And he has this almost theological, intellectual conversation with her, because that's who she is, right? She's the one who's always getting things done. She's the planner. She's the one who's figuring everything out. She's the one who's cooking the dinner while her sister Mary is sitting at the Lord's feet. So he knows what to do. And then he goes and he meets Mary. And what does he do with her? He weeps, because that's what she needs at that moment. And then he goes from there to the tomb and he calls forth Lazarus. It's amazing to watch how he can code shift from situation to situation, because he's there. He is completely there. He sees what's going on and he can make his choices based on that. He's not working as any type. He's beyond type at this point, because he's completely present and providing what love requires at a given moment. That's being in the pivot. That's being in the frictionless, weightless point. And that's where we can get, not all the time, but we can get better and better at it. And that's what this is all about. So this is what he's trying to describe. When I notice fear, usually it has to do with confronting someone who was important to me. If I simply stay with the experience, right? Remaining still and welcoming. Remember the welcoming prayer or the welcoming practice? When you're triggered and you feel that intense emotion, whatever it is, you don't freak out and you don't zone out and just react and fly off the handle, but you stop, you recognize it, you own it, you welcome it. And then as you're sitting with it, now you can say the affirmations. Now you can move into whatever you need to do to get right back into the moment again. Remain still and welcoming. I begin to notice that just inside, or perhaps below the fear, is an expansive energy that feels quite powerful and even fierce. That's my power. That is what I most deeply fear as well, right? Because he learned as a child that maybe that fear was what was going to separate him from the primary relationship in his life at that point, which was with his mother. And so he learned then to fear that power, that energy that he had. And so he's been discounting it. It has become his shadow. He relegated it to shadow from that point on. And even though it was something that he desperately needed as an adult, it wasn't available to him until he did this work. And now he could bring it back up, own it, but now use it in a positive way. If I remain quite still, I can literally feel the energy running in both directions at once. One side toward fear, that fear of losing relationships, right? And the other toward power, the ability to actually do something positive and what love requires in the moment. And at some point, they become almost indistinguishable, and I begin to feel sad. If I simply let go, the tension between them disappears, the sadness melts, and the courage to move ahead with faith appears in its place. I no longer have to manage the tension and can let the energy run as it wants to. There is the Wu Wei. There's the effortless action. He's not pushing the rope. He's not pushing the river anymore. He's flowing with the energy. And thus I find that I have greater access not only to the yin receptivity of my central triangle partner 9, but to the yang energy of 3 as well. In this way, the entire triangle seems to come together, right? The 9, the 3, and the 6. As I suspect it does for any other type once in the Tao Shu. Holy faith, once reawakened, leads also to renewed hope and love. I hope that illuminates a little bit more about this process. It's always going to be in the moment. We can't think it through. We can't theorize it. We can't read it out of a book. It's going to be when we have moments of clarity enough, when we're aware of what's happening to us in the moment. And as we go through this process again and again and again, that's how the fundamental transformation takes place.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, does this at all seem helpful? Or is it really just muddying the waters?
I love it. I love it. I love that image of, the kid abandoning themselves to be loved, right? Like basically, and I think we become each of the Enneagram types definitely do that to some degree. Like we get it in our head, like this is how I'm going to be loved. This is how I'm going to be lovable. And this idea that I can love my parents so much that I'm willing to sacrifice who I am for their love. It's brings tears to my eyes.
Mm-hmm. And the flip side of that is that you fear losing them so much, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It all resonates with me, Dave, because the 9, 3, and the 6 are very connected. And I see, because when he talked about fearing losing connection with his mother, that's the fear of a 9,
Mm-hmm.
isolation and breakage of relationship. But then
Mm-hmm.
the 3 jumps in and then he gets courageous and he can step up, kind of thing. But there's that delicate balance. And then the 6, well, then that's where the fears come in and the anxieties and such. But yeah, it makes sense. At
Yeah.
least this triangle makes sense for me. For others, different
Yeah.
triangles may make more sense too.
Absolutely. And the same thing happens in the 3 spot, right? Like the performer begins the performance because they think that's what the parent wants. Like that's how they're gonna get the parent's love.
Mhm.
And it's like you just, you know, stop being me so I can be who I think you want me to be. And I lose my sense of self in that process the more I conform to that.
And what William just said is the creation of the shadow.
Mm,
I'm going to stop being me so that I can be in relationship with you. That's what shadow is. We tend to think of shadow as our evil side, the little devil sitting on the one shoulder as opposed to the angel. No, it's whatever we relegate, whatever we wish into the cornfield, because it is not being accepted by the people around us at our early age. It's what we get the yardstick for that's going to end up relegated into shadow, right? Whether it's a
mm,
positive thing or not, it's annoying to our parents, and so it ends up in the shadow. And then later on in life, we're going to have to dig it back out again because we're missing that whole piece of our personality. And if it is something that's actually negative and is always going to be deleterious to relationships, well, then we still need to own it and find a way to dissipate it, but in ways that doesn't harm. We still need to let it play through. We just find ways to deal with that. Whether you punch pillows, scream into pillows, or whether you play, I don't know, flag football, or whatever you do to get those kind of energies out, there needs to be a way to dissipate that. But the ones that are positive, now, you can let them play through and you can celebrate them and bring them back to life.
mm.
I'm really looking forward to the next sections that we're going to be seeing the connections in each of our triangles. I think this is really rich.
Mm.
Um, And it is connecting. I thought of the shadow right away when you were talking, Dave. And oh, and it kind of broke my heart. You know, it was like, oh my goodness, is that what we're doing? Jeez.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And how long do we have to take to unlearn that and to
Mhm.
come back into our true identity?
Mhm.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
some people that never ever do, and that is so sad. You
Yeah.
know,
It really.
and you see people our age and older that they're older, but they're not really wiser. They haven't been able to, for whatever reason, you know.
Yeah.
And that's why as parents, our goal is not that our kids never get hurt. That's impossible.
Mhm.
But that we put a limit or a lid on the trauma so that it's not so great that they tie knots or get knots tied in their cord that can never be untied. Not really,
Yeah.
you know. And that's our real goal and responsibility as parents is to make sure that doesn't happen to the best of our ability. But when we, you know, have knots that we can't untie, that's almost impossible, you
Yeah.
know. And so no one gets out of childhood unscarred. No one is supposed to, but we certainly hope that we can keep a lid on the trauma so that the programming that unconscious programming we leave childhood with is undoable
Yeah.
once we actually start doing the work. But the real tragedy here is that nobody in our culture is really, well, it's starting to turn nice again, finally, but no one in our culture has been encouraging us to do this work. And the chief offenders are the church itself. The
Mm.
church has not been using the way of Jesus in the way that it was intended. It has become something that is just an event as opposed to a process. You know, we just say this sinner's prayer and now we're new creatures and we don't understand why our lives are still a mess and we're still so afraid. And this is it. This is what the way is all about. And so that's what I loved, at least, you know, about our culture now, as messed up as it is. Some of these threads are being put back into place. We're seeing contemplation coming back in, even starting with Thomas Merton back in the 40s. And now we're seeing a lot of these types of tools like the Enneagram coming back in and new ways of looking at our spirituality. And so there is hope that maybe next generations can have these tools again available to them so that they have a chance to be able to put it all back together and get into that weightless, frictionless point at the center.
Mm. I very much I remember a childhood experience when he was talking about his moment of courage where I think it was the first time I hit one of my siblings, like I punched my older brother. Um, I didn't know where that courage came from, but instantly after I did it, the fear gripped me, it felt like I contracted in some way. Um, and what he was describing, that moment of courage, the fear of your own strength, basically. Like that resonated deeply with me, and I don't know if I ever completely shook that.
What number are you, William?
I believe I'm a nine. I believe I'm a nine, but I resemble a five a lot, and I definitely have three and six qualities as well. But I think I'm a nine pretty much.
Lovely.
All right. Well, that was a lot.
But
It's
I was
always a
thinking,
lot. It's always
yeah.
a little bit of a drink from a fire hose here on Wednesday nights. So,
No, I was thinking too what William said, fear of your own strength. But I was thinking too, if I hit my brother, is what about the repercussion from the big brother, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm sure that weighed into it, but I remember it happened in front of my mom, and I I had the sense that she was proud of me in that moment.
Wow.
But I like instantly, like I'm talking about like the second after it happened, like that fear that wasn't there at all just came back,
Mm.
or I I think maybe I even noticed that fear for the first time then.
Did it change your relationship with your brother?
Not really. He's still the one I want to punch today. Um,
And as repercussions go, as long as you can just run faster, then get away.
there you go.
Punch harder.
Yeah, fight harder, run faster.
Plus, it's kind of the nature of little boys. They punch each other out and then they're laughing and having ice cream together in the next breath. It's
Hey, Dave, I just want to comment on how you were saying that time has to catch up to us.
awareness.
Awareness has to catch up to us. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I've joked around about that feeling of, boy, the longer I practice meditation and how to be present, the harder it is for me to remember what I did yesterday. Remember what happened last week. Yeah.
Mm.
I thought it was kind of cute joke, but maybe there's something to it.
Mm.
I
Or-
do think, yes, that the more that we practice meditation, centering prayer, anything contemplative, the more that we live in the present moment.
Mhm.
And the more that future and past just kind of fall off the radar. Because more and more, not just cognitively, but we realize they're not real. They don't matter. What matters is right here, right now. And everything that got us to this point, all that matters is who are we at this point? Whatever our potential is, doesn't matter. Who are we right now? You're at the plate right now. Are you going to hit the ball or not? Nothing else really matters. And I think that does happen naturally as you spend more time in contemplation.
And I noticed also that I used to carry and ruminate more about things when I didn't like what was said or happened. And I'm dropping that. I'm just leaving it behind a lot faster. And maybe that's because that's over. It's
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
here right now. So it's a
And then you're going to find that your offenses start falling off. You become more and more unoffendable. The things that used to just tick you off, they just don't really raise the blood pressure anymore. It's just this, it's almost like a natural evolution. You don't have to do it. You don't have to affect it. You just keep showing up to that presence. It's exactly what Jesus said. Seek first the kingdom and God's righteousness, and all else is added. Well, that's what he's talking about. The kingdom is this moment right now. God's righteousness is unity, oneness. And so you keep practicing that, you go for that, and everything kind of starts to fall into place.
Mhm.
That's the beauty of it. We don't have to get so complex. We can retreat into the simplicity of now,
yes,
and the complexity will take care of itself.
I like it.
Yeah, it's great. All right. Well, let's leave it there. And we're gonna pick up the next triangle next week, and Judy's gonna have fun. We start talking about 5, 8s, and 2s.
Oh,
And
I'm at 1.
Yeah.
I have to wait till the end.
Where's your triangle, Judy? You're at you're 4, 7, and 1. Okay.
Yeah. I'm at the
That's right
end.
after this, so you're close.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Well, I believe I'm a 5, and we've got some other 5s in here, don't we? Do we have any more 5s? Oh, I'm the only one? Okay, Ellen, I think you're a 5. And 2s.
And Jerry and Marianne are 2s.
2s. Yeah, so we got 2s, and then 8s. Sharon's an 8, and Ellen, you just keep
Ellen,
raising your
I
hand.
know.
Ellen's a chameleon. Wait, Bill, what number are you? Do you know? We're gonna figure you out. Come on.
Depends on, well, let me know when you do.
No, you were honing in on something, Bill. What did you say that you thought you
Yeah,
were?
you were.
Me?
Yeah, a few weeks
Yes.
ago, you said you thought you were what?
I
Oh,
don't
come
remember.
on. You said
No,
something.
honestly, I don't
You
remember.
did. Come on,
There's,
fess up.
I have a lot of nineness in me, and people don't see that.
I can see that. I can see a little bit.
Okay.
Lindy, what are you? I forgot.
I believe I'm a 9,
Oh, you think you're 9 too? Okay.
but it's funny. The wings I don't really relate to as much as
Mm.
what are the wings?
The 1 and the 8.
The one and the 8.
If you're a
Yeah,
9.
I relate mostly to 7, and I don't know why that is. But when I read through the 9, I'm just going, that's really what I see the most in my personality. But there's something in the 7s. I can't remember what it was, but I just thought, well, I'm a lot of that too.
Mhm.
Trying to figure it out still.
Yeah. Well, somebody needs to peg Bill. Okay,
I
let's get
know.
him on the board.
We'll peg you. We'll figure it out.
Well, you seem like a 5 to me.
I do?
Yeah.
Huh.
Are you not?
I'm not
I,
sure.
I don't,
Have you tested?
I've tested many times, and it comes out different a lot of times.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, if it's
Depends
Come
on
on
the
into the
author.
5, Bill. The water's fine.
Right.
I've never tested as a 5 in any of the tests that I've taken. I've probably
what's
taken
the
4 or
most
5.
common thing you test?
Huh?
What's
There
the
are
most
3?
common number you test?
1 and 3.
1 and 3.
Okay. Well,
I could see a 3, maybe. Yeah.
I can see a 3.
Yeah.
You know?
But that's when I'm taking it when I'm in a business mindset.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I tested as a 3 last time I tested, which was first time ever. Kind of shocked me, but yeah. But I think I'm identifying as a 5.
I don't see you as a 3, Dave.
It's really what you think you are.
No, I don't see myself as a 3 either, but I can play one on TV, and I've done it for years. And kind of like Bill is saying, at the time I was taking that test, I was probably more in that headspace, especially since really think about it. I was taking the test to check it out before I put it into the email that I was sending out to all of you. So I was in leadership mode. I was thinking, I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but just thinking back, that's the reason I took the test was not for me, but was to see what the test was like before I sent it out to you and to make sure it held some water. Did that skew some of my answers? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
And
Maybe.
Jennifer, I think you're a 1, right? Uh-oh, she's asleep, maybe. No. And Jennifer, didn't you identify as a 1, kind of? Oh,
You're muted there.
Oh, you're muted. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
A
a
1.
1.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
All
And
right.
Scott, you're not
I
sure.
feel you're
and
gonna have to
Judy.
get Gail here for being a 1 too.
Yeah, I could bring Gail into the 1 section. There you go.
And the
All right,
ones
well-
usually know exactly who they are, right?
Yeah.
And George, you need to test so you know who you are.
And we're not that bad. We're really not.
I don't know who I'm at.
All right. Well, then next week you'll at least have me to kick around. So
I think I'm a 10.
Are you Bo Derek or something? He thinks he's Bo Derek.
I'm like Muhammad Ali. I'm the greatest.
Should I be worried? I'm testing as a 42.
I was a 49er for years.
Were you really?
Now you can just be a 9er. You don't even have to be a 49er.
I tested it as a 9, and Nina immediately said, "You're not a 9. I think you're a 4." So I took 49. I was a 49. All right, Scotty, save us.
Oh, Lord, thank you for this time. It's really special. It's a blessing, Lord. And we want to pray for the people that couldn't make the meeting tonight, that they're in good health or recovery mode or whatever is necessary to get them moving along in a positive direction, and let them know that even though they're not here, they're being thought of and cared for, and we just miss them, Lord. So, Father God, help us to go out and be useful in this kingdom and to love each other and share encouragement with as many people as possible, and to live our lives in a peaceful way that glorifies you. We love you, Lord. Thank you for this time. It's in your holy and precious name, Lord Jesus, that we pray and we give our thanks and we say our amens. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on Sunday.
See you Sunday, guys.
Okay.
Okay.
See you Sunday.
Guys, take care.
Good
Bye.
night.
No,
Glad you
guys.
made it, Mindy.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Kathy.
Bye.
Bye, Jordana.
Good night. Good
Good night.
night.
Good night, guys.
Good night, Scott. Good night, George. Good night, Jordana.
All right. See you
Good night.
Sunday.
See you Sunday, dear.